Today I'm going to show you how to edit moody street photography scenes like this using some of the incredible new features of Luminar Neo. Let's create some works of art. Play tape. Now, it's been a while since I sat and explored an editing platform other than Lightroom and Photoshop, but recently I find myself getting lost in the wonderful world of Luminar Neo. Why? Because they're doing things that other editing suites simply aren't. Plus, they're constantly introducing brand new features with very creative results. Let's dive straight in. Right, let's open this image from one of my recent trips to Paris. And we can see we have a bunch of tools on the right panel, which we're going to explore throughout this video. But first things first, this image is ever so slightly suffering from motion blur. It's not tack sharp. But Luminar Neo has a feature called Super Sharp, which uses AI to analyze the scene and fix the problem. So using the universal feature set to low, as there isn't a lot of blur, you can see the software working it out. It takes a few seconds, but it is worth it. And here's the result. Using the before and after slider, we can see how well the raindrops have sharpened up on his hood. So what next? I think the background is a little too bright from the main subject matter. So if we scroll down to the creative section, there's an option called Relight. And here we have the choice to brighten or darken the foreground and background based on what the AI thinks. So let's reduce down the far brightness. It takes a moment to work out foreground and background. And that looks a bit unnatural. We can go the other way if we like. Now let's settle on -40. And actually the man looks a little bright to me, so let's make him -10. Now up here in the Edits tab is where you will see all of our adjustments so far. Now quite similar to how Photoshop uses layers. And we can do a before and after on each of the adjustment layers. But here's one of the best functions of Luminar Neo. You can add multiples of the same adjustment. If we just relight the foreground again, it appears in its own layer in the Edits tab. We can hide or simply delete the adjustment. Very useful for building up our composition and keeping the adjustments separate from each other. We all like a clean workflow. So what next? I think we need to reduce down the overall exposure. Using a develop adjustment, we can bend the curve downwards. And there looks pretty nice. Next, we're going to add some drama using the dramatic tool. And what this does is really enhance the contrast without oversaturating or crushing the colors. In fact, it pulls out some of that vibrance, which I quite enjoy. Let's settle on about +30. Now comes the fun part, manipulating the lights. Up here we have a very powerful tool called Magic Light. And this is going to change the game if you've only ever been used to editing in, say, Lightroom or Capture One. Let's have a play with these sliders and see what happens. Increasing the intensity is going to add starburst effects to the existing light sources in the image. And if we head down to number of beams, we can reduce the points or add more depending on your preference. Also, we can rotate the starbursts. But for this particular image, I'm going to take away the star altogether using beam width and simply leave the glow effect. In fact, let's decrease the intensity a little and tweak the glow size and clearness. A quick before and after. That's looking good, but we may revisit this once the edit is near completion. So let's see, that's 5 separate adjustment layers so far. Now let's look at adding some real punch to our main subject, the smoking man. Using another develop module, this time we're going to use the power of AI to select the subject by clicking on masking. And we'll choose Mask AI. And it's analyzing the scene for specific objects. And it's come back with human, flora, and architecture. We'll choose human. And it's done a pretty decent job, little overspill on the chap in the back, but we can fix that by heading up to Mask and Mask Actions. Choose Show, which activates the visible mask, and back to the brush, choose Erase, and then pick a suitable brush size and softness, then simply paint it away. Now we can click on the adjustments and make the changes. And let's add some black so he really stands out. Now we're getting somewhere. How about some color adjustments to reduce down these blues? Of course, we have a standard HSL slider section. And let's tone down the reds in his skin. Oranges in these light sources, we can give some more saturation to. Some green foliage, let's also enhance those to complement the warm tones. Blues, I'm not so keen on. And how's our progress so far? Pretty punchy. Let's add a vignette to pull focus into the middle. And one final thing, just to define the detail in the gentleman's face, we will use details. Once again, I'll use masking to select the area we want this adjustment. I mean, this guy could be the Sith Lord, huh? Now, small detail is going to enhance the skin texture. I'd rather just focus on those laughter lines. So using the large detail slider, nice and subtle but effective. And you can see how far this edit has come. Now, I think these light glows are not quite right, so let's head back into the magic light adjustment layer and tweak this a bit. The size is just a little too big, maybe +10. Intensity could come down, and maybe the color layer could do with changing the hue on those yellows to more of an orange. And that is looking really dramatic and moody. And you know, there is another option way down in the Creative tab called Glow. And inside this, we have a few options like Auto Effect. But how about Soft Focus? And if this floats your boat, that's absolutely fine. I don't think it particularly works on this image, but perhaps another. So let's just get rid of that. And here's the finished product. Nice moody street scene using some fairly simple techniques in Luminar Neo. Let's take a look at this image, which is crying out for a sky replacement. And thankfully Luminar Neo handles these exceptionally well. So let's head up to Sky AI and open up the panel. And we have a few inbuilt skies to choose from, although the marketplace has a lot more if you're willing to pay extra. But let's choose one of these. And I think this will work well, but we need to change the orientation for it to work with this composition. So let's firstly flip the sky and also move the horizontal position so the sun is left of the image where I'm directing my focus sat on the bike. Now, the great thing about Luminar Neo is that you can relight the rest of the scene according to the sky that you've chosen, because at the moment this looks a little bit unnatural. So let's play around with the relight strength. All the way to 100, which darkens down the foreground. We can also relight the saturation to match the foreground with the warmth in the sky. But the relighting has had some adverse effects on my face, so we can remove this using the masking feature. A brush and erase. Let's resize the brush and the softness a touch. There we go, much better. And I think the exhaust pipe needs sorting too. Okay, now for my favorite tool, the dramatic feature. But I don't want it on the whole image, just the bike and me. Let's first add a mask and just paint with the brush the area I want the effect most. Now we can go back to the adjustments and introduce some of that drama. Looking good. So what next? How about some mystical effects? Really quite fond of this feature as well. But again, I only want it in the background. So this time let's create a linear gradient mask and just position it diagonally across the foreground items. Now that's starting to come together. But what I think this image needs is some professional contrast. Down here we have a super contrast feature, which is really quite powerful. Playing around with the highlight contrast slider really brings that sky to life. So let's dial it back a touch to about 25. And shadows contrast really pump up the balance slider. Let's look at a tool we've not yet touched upon, which is called Mood. This gives the option to apply a cinematic LUT over the top of your existing edit so far. Let's hover over a few of these. Liking Long Beach. I think Santa Barbara is my favorite. Now for my eye, the blues and greens in this image are kind of spoiling the harmony of the colors. I want this scene to predominantly have warm tones. So let's go with a color adjustment and just dial back those middle colors like blue, cyan, and green. And one final tweak to the luminance of those posts just behind the bike. Now for a bit of artistic flair with this headlamp. Using this new feature called Neon Glow, which I'll go into more detail shortly, but for now, let's add a brush mask. Reduce the size of the brush and place a dot. Okay, we want to see what this mask is doing, so we need to show the mask. Now simply dab on the lamp, and while holding down the Shift key, we can draw a straight line by dabbing the other end. Let's repeat that along the bottom. Now we can head into the glow feature, and using outer, let's increase the amount. The size will govern how far the glow reaches. And of course, we can change the color with the final two sliders. A quick before and after. Nice. Let's sort some of this mess on the floor using the erase feature, which compared to Lightroom, I much prefer how you can select the areas in one go and then apply the correction by clicking erase. And boom. One final edit, as I think my face is a little hazy. Create a mask over the face with the brush tool and maybe the hand. Now we can add some contrast, reduce the highlights, and finally bring down the vibrance. And this is my final edit. Quite a dramatic difference from the original raw file, I think you'll agree. But of course, the power of Luminar Neo does not stop there. The new neon glow effect allows you to create some really inventive pieces of art with endless neon and relighting options. And not forgetting the incredibly useful studio lighting feature where you can overlay and manipulate light to match a scene, changing the depth, angle, and even the pattern of the light. Portrait photographers should be very impressed with tools like studio lighting. And the magic of Luminar Neo continues with features like HDR merge, where you can drag multiple exposures into the dedicated HDR merge facility, choose auto align, chromatic aberration and ghost reduction, and the quality of the output, and simply merge. It produces a brand new TIFF file in a separate HDR folder where you can perform your usual adjustments and create dramatic images with real wow factor. What else can this impressive piece of kit do? Well, focus stacking for one thing. If you have multiple images of a subject taken with shallow depth of field and they have varying focus points, then Luminar Neo can accept up to 100 images and the AI engine will focus stack them together, making sure that every part of the camera will be in focus. It can take a while depending on how many images and the size of the files. These 10 images are 100 megapixel photos, so a very heavy payload. And here is the result. Very impressive focus stack with pretty much every detail rendered. The software also has a bunch of presets inbuilt to choose from. Let's go with one of the objects collection, and my final edit looks like this. So these are just some of the reasons why Luminar Neo is an absolute giant in the world of photo editing. With continuous updates and brand new features being introduced, they're keeping on top of the world of AI and what is possible with a raw image. And of course, there are endless assets within Skylum's marketplace for Luminar Neo as well. You could get lost for hours with what is on offer regarding overlays, textures, LUTs, sky replacements, backgrounds, presets, and tutorial courses to get you off the ground and creating your works of art. I'm definitely converted. I must have tried and tested every piece of software imaginable for photography, and Luminar Neo is one of the most adaptive and well-rounded useful tools, whether you're a product photographer, landscapes, portraits, architecture, street photography. There's something for everyone. Anyway, I'll stop gushing. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give us a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more photography content like this, and I'll catch you on the flip side.